Welcome back, Leaders Live. Charlie Stevens, your host. We had a great episode last week with Laura Chow, principal at Canaan Ventures, Canaan Partners. Key gem takeaway was to have a good community around you and build a core team of advisors and mentors that can help you elevate and get to that next step. Today we're on 56th and 5th Avenue. We're going to meet with Brendan Kamm, CEO, co-founder of Thnks. We're going to 712 5th Avenue. Let's go. Back, Leaders Live. Charlie Stevens, your host. Brendan Kamm, CEO, co-founder. Thnks. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, I'm excited for the show. Quick little reason why we're doing this. Quick little intro why we're doing this. Because relationship matters. That's what LinkedIn says. That's what in real life. That's what matters. And we want to understand how business leaders in New York City operate. Figure out what you're doing. What you're looking for opportunities-wise, and the viewers, anyone who's watching the show, myself, can try to understand that and link you up with other people and add value.
Great.
I think that's a pretty good way to live, and that's what we're trying to do here.
Sure thing.
All right. So before we get started, too, check in. So add some comments, say hello in the comment bar on LinkedIn, tag somebody who should be watching this, and definitely ask some questions, even if we don't get to it on live. We'll have the Thnks team follow up and answer any questions that you ask. So definitely engage with us and share this content. But let's get into your story.
Surely.
Why we're here, right?
Absolutely.
712 5th Avenue, nice building.
Beautiful building.
Got great space. Look at this desk. It's pretty nice.
Straight from the rainforest, apparently.
Yes, exactly. Rainforest wood. Before Thnks, give us some context. You were in advertising, sales, media. Give us background before you started this business and
Sure.
What you were doing.
So I started my career at a school in media planning at a large advertising agency, New Public Group here in New York. And actually a couple years in fell into media barter, which was a sort of a niche business. I was a somewhat early employee at a company called Orion Trading. It was under the IPG umbrella and at the people there. And it was right around 2006, 2007. And so I got into this business where I was trading distressed assets for advertising time, literally taking like old airplanes from American Airlines and turning it into advertising credits for them.
Wow.
So this whole kind of cool arbitrage model. But if you remember around that time, the economy started to go down and this business just took off because suddenly everyone had distressed assets, nobody had cash, and we were a great solution. And so I went from this sort of small niche company to 300 plus employees, 7 international offices. By the time I had left there, I was running a large team of sales and client service people. It was just a crazy cool ride.
Yeah.
And I loved it. It was a great company, Orion Trading. There's a gentleman who runs it named Brian McMahon, who's a mentor of mine who I love and I learned so much from.
Yeah, so what did you learn from him?
Yeah, I mean, Brian really taught me that it's about relationships, right? So that was the first, I was a big, I got my spreadsheets and I'm looking at numbers and we can do this and that. And he's like, you got to get on an airplane. Just go. I was in Dallas with American Airlines. I was out with Carl's Jr. in San Francisco. It was, get on the plane, go meet people, shake hands, build relationships. And that was probably the biggest thing I learned from him, not just with clients, but even internally as you grow a team. That's the lifeblood of any company. And so I think there's a lot I learned from him, but that was probably the number one thing. Being able to just sit face to face and look someone in the eye and continue a relationship is really how business gets done.
Yeah.
And so that was just an amazing ride for me and what got me kind of hooked on the idea of growth and being part of something that's a rocket ship.
Right. Well, I mean, you went through a rocket ship. You said your team was like 19 people. Then you went to 300 or something like that. Like that's a rocket ship. So
Definitely.
Through that process of like absolute crazy growth, is there tips to elevate a team like that? How do you do it?
Yeah, I think something I learned along the way, and now being on the other side of it and being a CEO, is the less control you have, the better. You always want to kind of put everything in the place you want it to be, and you realize that's not how it happens, right? It only happens when you find the right people and trust them. And if I look at any mistakes I've made, even it's been where you made the wrong hire, and that might not be because it doesn't mean the person wasn't any good. It means they didn't quite fit culturally, or didn't have quite the same work style as maybe the rest of the team. And those are the things that I found really make a difference. It's finding the right people, putting a vision in place, and letting people execute on it. It's not sort of being over every little individual thing happening. It's setting that sort of path, and then having the right people that you trust and that want to be on the ride with you.
Right. So you're not micromanaging everybody.
Totally.
You're actually trusting them and letting them grow as well.
Yeah, and it's not good for your own health or their health if you're micromanaging or staying on top of them.
Yeah.
So I find it's trust, and even if it doesn't get done the way I would have done it, it's getting us to the same place at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Thnks.
Yeah.
I mean, it is very cool. We met a couple years ago back at New York Tech Day.
That's right.
And I thought it was one of the cooler products out there, actually.
Thank you.
And we stayed in touch. And building businesses with gratitude is a great tagline. But tell us a little bit about the product, the services, the software that you have, everything that's going on here,
Sure.
and how you're ramping up.
Yeah, it's, look, it goes back to those relationships, right? It's a software platform, lets you send small gestures of appreciation and do it digitally. So there's times, right now, very apropos, that you can't meet face to face. And so where if I walked into Starbucks right now and saw you or a client of mine, I'd buy you a cup of coffee every time. But why aren't I doing that every day then? Why not do it for my client in Chicago or LA? And that's really where Thnks came from. The idea that I could just send these little gestures. And I call them that because sometimes I think people think of us as like gifting. It's not really gifting. That's just about doing the right thing and being grateful. It's not really about a gift. And people use us to gift, sure. You can send bottles of wine and all kinds of kind of fun stuff on the platform. But to me, it's more about that everyday relationship building. Hey, I'm thinking about you.
Right.
It's raining out. I'll send you an Uber ride. Skip the subway. It's on me. That type of thing. So the front end of the software is very much, here's a very simple way that you can connect and stay connected and let your clients, customers, employees know you're thinking of them. What I'm really selling to some of my larger clients is the back end of that software. Because in a business context, even just buying you a cup of coffee, I've got an expense report to do. I have to know what budget it comes from. There may be compliance rules for me or for the recipient. So Thnks takes care of all that. So it can be set up so that if you're in a relationship building role, sales, client services, customer support, anything you see, you can send. So your budget's there, the expense report's taken care of, it hits your CRM, the compliance rules are already in place. We can actually stop you from sending so that you don't break rules in terms of how much, over a time period, individually, all these things that traditionally would take someone compiling expense reports now get done in real time.
Right.
And so that's what gives us a sort of enterprise base of customers that we have.
Super helpful too. I mean, and not to mention it's much nicer than an email. Like write a long-winded email, this is what I do, or like thanks for meeting with me or whatever. Like you sent me a cup of coffee and a brownie from Starbucks. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. But then there was also an interface to communicate where I was like, do you want to say something back? So I was like, this is great, this is cool. And is that integrated with the software as well? So it's like into your CRM or something?
It is. It all comes back. So it gives people an easy way to now connect something oftentimes outside of the sale or the business element that we have. You and I were talking earlier about giving people movie tickets, for instance. Something where I could follow up a few days later, how'd you like the film? Did you enjoy it? Did the kids like it?
Right.
It just connects us at a deeper level. And I think that's just really important, that you've got this sort of continued interaction, right? People are inundated with emails, with phone calls. Nobody's listening to voicemail. Nobody even answers the phone anymore because of all the spam at this point. But we've got a 90% plus open rate on these things. So it's a very,
I think so,
right? it's a great little thing that doesn't cost a lot of money, keeps you connected, and then it is about giving. So as you saw, if you don't want to accept the gift or you can't because your company doesn't allow you, you can actually donate the value of it to a charity instead. So we try to keep that idea of philanthropy like deep within the core of who we are at Thnks.
Yeah. It's great. I mean, I talk to a lot of people, and it's almost like a great sales tip is to give them a book or something like that we were talking about, or something that could be good, or a movie that they really enjoy. And I like it a lot. As you've built your team, talk about the growth process of building a team, hiring. What you look at as a CEO in building this company.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a sort of energy level that I look for first and foremost. Our culture is fun. You and I were walking over by my team, and I said, "Oh, they're all in a meeting in that conference room." They were actually in there assigning nicknames to everyone on the team. Do I wish they were building business? Sure, but like this is part of culture, right? I love it. They really like each other. We all do as a team. We're in a time right now where a lot of teams are looking to work from home, and our team's trying to figure out ways they can still work together, even if it comes to that. We've got a video chat set up at 9 a.m. It's a fun and energetic group, and when you're doing a business like this, I think you just need that sort of people who can make connections, right? It's a very personal kind of business. We're not a highly number crunching type of thing. It's about those relationships at the end of the day.
Right.
So we look for people who really, probably the biggest change I've had is looking for culture fit before I'm looking at education or experience, and we just don't move past if it's not a culture fit.
Yeah.
And that's sort of number one for us.
Tell me a little bit more about culture fit and like how you look at culture while running your company. I mean, do you set a mantra for the company, or like how do you look at culture and how do you implement it?
It's another one of those things I've kind of learned over time now. You can't force culture, right? You feel like you want to set it up and will be fun. I mean, the classic example is the startup with the ping pong table and the beer keg.
Right.
It doesn't matter if everyone's so overworked that they can't go have a beer or they feel like it's not part of what they can do. So what we do is just try to make sure there's these elements of sort of bonding. We have a once a month a Thanks Day. So this is a time for us to go out and do something together as a team. And what we've now instituted is realizing that our sort of key values are being thoughtful, giving back. So we're now one in every 3 Thanks Days we go and we do something where we give back. So
nice.
we were recently at a soup kitchen in the Bronx.
Very nice.
We've done a few different events where we're sort of volunteering, and it's a good reminder that you go to a Yankee game together or go bowling together, and then the next week you're realizing there's people who literally need to come to a soup kitchen for their meal. And it grounds you, and it makes sure we remember sort of what we're doing and how lucky we are to have what we have. So for me, I think it's very much, again, not so much micromanaging culture as you get the right people in place, and they'll drive that, and then you just have to be confident. We do things like very extensive vacation, come and go as you please, as you need to. You don't have to tell me if you have a doctor's appointment, you need to leave in the middle of the day. Like, we treat you like an adult.
Right.
We expect you to do the right thing as well. And I think that gives people a lot of trust between the company and the employees, and even the employees amongst themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. As you have a software and you are integrated with the sales cycle, and you have, it's almost like your superpower is sales. I mean, you've been doing it for a while.
Right.
Do you have? I think we have a lot of people who actually watch that are within sales, and they're trying to better themselves. Do you have any tips or tricks for sales cycles and how to get to that next level?
I think one thing for me is it's become so automated, and that's great because it extends your reach, but it's sort of extending you horizontally at the expense sometimes of vertically, right? So we don't get as deep sometimes with people. I think it's important, especially as you look at a pipeline and sort of key things. Don't just rely on your kind of automated marketing and the flow that works for everyone.
Yeah.
That's a great base, but I think you really do have to go a little further. As much as people aren't picking up the phone, if you can get that time, obviously face-to-face even better.
Right.
I just think it's really important still for that relationship building. I also think people have a tendency to, they're so worried about their qualification, right? We got to qualify the lead, absolutely, but just because it's not the right thing now doesn't mean it won't be in the future. So you think about it like you think about networking. It doesn't have to lead to the sale right now. I just need to keep meeting people, staying in touch, keeping on radars, and then when the time is right, I'm there. Otherwise, I'm constantly just looking for, am I at the right time, am I at the right time, am I at the right time?
Right.
But if you can actually just maintain relationships over time, you're going to be, when the time's right, top of mind and ready to go.
Yeah. Continue to build the relationships maybe with the Soul Cycle class or something like that you were talking
Exactly,
about, right?
exactly. Obviously a little self-serving in that regard.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
look, it doesn't have to be that you even send them something like that, right? It's there's Thanks exists as part of that, but some people maybe you send a handwritten note to. A little old school, a little bit different. You stand out. We do a lot. In my career, I've many a time where I've just kind of shown up in a city and just start hitting up everybody in the city. So I have one meeting there. I'll look at everybody in the Rolodex and say, hey, I'm here. Can I take you to lunch? Can I take you to a drink?
Yeah.
Right? I don't have any agenda. I'd just love to, why not? I'm in town.
Right.
And I think sometimes people lose that in the, there's so much with all the automation and everything going on, you lose a lot of the personalization.
Let's talk about the partnerships, the collaboration aspect of it, right? So what makes a good partnership that in the sales cycle or wherever in business, right?
Yeah.
That something that's worked for you and why it's worked?
Yeah, I think making things simple is so important. I look at CRMs, for instance, and obviously everyone would love to have their CRM full of every piece of data that we get and we come in, but you end up burning out sort of your sales teams and there's the overhead cost of it all versus obviously sitting at a management level. I want all the information I can get and pull all these reports and things, and then you've got a sales guy who can't focus on selling because I think Salesforce did a report, it's like 68% of a salesperson's time is spent on administrative tasks.
Right.
They're not actually
inputting
selling.
who I'm going after when I can
Yeah,
actually
but instead of going
them.
after, right? And that's always the push and pull with salespeople because you can't have no data, right? We have to know what's working, what's not. You have to make sure you're actually doing what you're supposed to be doing. And it's one of the things when we built Thanks, it was my partner Larry has always said, he uses the iPod example, right? We just need the box with the one button. And I think that works really well as long as you can build something powerful but keep it really simple. And I think that's so important in all aspects. So whether that's something like using Thanks, we actually have clients who, salespeople have told me, I use Thanks, I love it, business relationship, whatever, but the real reason I use it is it's actually easier than filling in my CRM because it connects and does it all for me.
Right.
So fine by me, but it's just funny that it's almost a level of laziness that makes them want to use it because it literally fills in the CRM for them and they can show that they did this outreach or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that's one key thing I found. It's very easy to look on paper at what makes sense, but at the end of the day, you've got people out there on the road, you've got people making 100 phone calls. It's not an easy job.
Right.
You take a lot of no when you're on the sort of sales side. Even the client service side, there's a lot of things go wrong. It's funny, one of our more popular categories in Thanks is actually the I'm sorry category. So you wouldn't, you think of it in terms of saying thank you, but there's a lot of times when something just goes a little bit wrong. And so we've had people send the sorry board game, the Rocky Road redo Sunday, which is like a Baskin Robbins thing. So they get pretty fun with it, but yeah, it happens, right?
That's
and so
good.
having an easy way to stay on top of that and just acknowledge it when it does happen, I think is really important.
Yeah. What are some of the partnerships or collaborations that you're looking for in the future that possibly someone who's watching or on the replay or whatever it may be can reach out to you and say, I have that type of business, maybe we could partner up or
Sure.
whatever it may be. What are the opportunities you're looking for?
Really, there's two sides to my business, right? There's people using and sending Thanks, and then there's the actual Thanks that get sent.
Yep.
On people using Thanks, it really runs the gamut. I mean, I've got car dealerships and real estate agents, then I've got Fortune 500 companies with huge sales teams. Generally, I think the best use case, LinkedIn itself is a client actually, and they've got 40 managers around the country who manage teams using Thanks, and it's great. This big sort of distributed sales force can be managed in terms of budgets and rules and everything else from sort of one central account. And so that tends to work really well in that regard. But it's a pretty customizable platform, so can run the gamut in terms of who we look for there. On the flip side, I'd love to add more experiential type of things to the Thanks platform.
Right.
So it's great that I can send you an Uber ride or a cup of coffee or a pizza, but wouldn't it be cool if I could send you a Soul Cycle class or something that's sort of more local and something that you can do as a team. We've looked at things like hair blow dry salons, right? It'd be cool to have like a shoe shine, right? These sort of little things that you do every day. Those are the things that can really be beneficial to someone instead of doing that kind of swag coffee mug hat.
Right.
I'd love
Which
to
you
send you a
have.
shoe shine or whatever, which we have.
Yeah.
And look, it is part of it. To me, that's marketing more than relationship building.
Yeah.
And that's certainly part of the whole flow of building relationship. But if it can be thoughtful and something I know you could use, I want to do that first and foremost.
Right.
And so that's always what I'm looking for.
Yeah, great sales tool. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of opportunities there to partner with you. Let's talk about the network aspect of it. I mean, you got to build a pretty good network to get these sales. How do you go about building your network? Any tips or anything like that?
Yeah, I know there's a very popular thing that says, especially if you're a executive and CEO, you need to learn how to say no. And I get that. I think I've gotten good at making sure I'm taking meetings and things that matter. But at the same time, I tend to be a yes guy. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that may be at the expense of some of my personal time, but it does open up a lot of doors. I don't need an agenda to meet with someone or have to have a reason. I think that's how you really build a network. It's truly, not just what can you do for me, what can I do for you,
yeah.
and have that give and take, because I may have something good for you now and you may come to me 6 months later with something else. And you find even in a city like New York, as big as it is, everyone's very connected as you start to really get into it, whether that's the investors or real estate or whatever it might be. The people who are networkers, and you'll kind of keep running in the same circles, and those relationships get tighter and tighter.
Right. If you're saying yes to a lot of different people, do you break down the time stamp? I mean, I've heard of the 5-20 rule, which is a 5-minute call or a 20-minute actual meeting, face-to-face meeting, but like, what do you do to actually, because if you say yes to everybody, your time's all taken up. Like, how do you kind of justify your time?
I actually do it, so I proactively block time on my calendar for this exact thing. Because if you just let your calendar run rampant, right, you'll always run out of time. So I actually have a couple 2-hour blocks where I will fill that time with, like you said, it might be a 5-10 minute, let's have an introductory call. It's where I use thanks again, right? And then I can send you a little thanks to sort of solidify it. But I make sure I set that time ahead of time. So I have 2 blocks on my calendar, a Friday afternoon and Wednesday morning, where that time is always blocked off. And occasionally I'll use it for my own, okay, I just need to go do something for my head. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes what I'm doing is filling that with things that I don't really know that are, maybe this will help, maybe it won't, maybe it's something for the future. So I'll block those into those times. And I just think it's important to have that set aside, otherwise you'll never do it.
Yeah, I like that, 2 blocks, Monday morning and afternoon, Friday afternoon. I try to do the Friday afternoon, like follow-ups and like, it's good to block off the time. I think you got the right idea.
I find if I don't do that, it's one of those things that's very easy to push. Like, I'm really busy. And you have to be true to yourself with it, right? Because you're trying to set meetings, you're like, you got that blocked time, I could put it in there. And I fall, I'll do it sometimes, but I try not to. I try to keep that really as time for that proactive kind of thinking. Yeah,
100%. The viewer questions, we had a few viewer questions actually submit before. So the ones that we had was from Chris, and it was, did you do research on the psychology of the sales cycle, and what was that?
Yeah, it's actually, it's funny, it's one of the more fascinating pieces that I really get into, even before we started Thnks. The sort of big work on it, I guess, if you look in, there's a book by Robert Cialdini called Influence, and it's all about influence and persuasion, and chapter 2 is about reciprocity. And a lot of the science behind Thnks is actually built into that idea of reciprocity. So as human beings, we're kind of hardwired to want to stay even, never feel indebted. And indebted doesn't necessarily mean, full-on debt, right? The example they give in the book is the Hare Krishnas in the 80s in the airports. And they would kind of hand you a flower as you walked by. And they did a study on it, and they showed, people who took the flower, even if just did it absentmindedly, would give like 90% of the time and then throw the flower out in the garbage. Because it wasn't about what they were given. It was just the idea that, I was given something, I have to give back. Mm-hmm. I'm sure in the mail we've all received, you get the packet with your return address kind of stamps on it. Hey, a free gift from us. And that actually drives huge amounts of donations because people have this feeling of reciprocity that they want to give back if they've been given to. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of it, the idea of why this works and the ROI is baked into that. So as much as it is about gratitude and thoughtfulness, there's a true ROI to the business of giving. And that's why we like the small gesture, right? Because you never want to be, it shouldn't be something that feels like a bribe or like someone feels forced to do something. Yep. So the cup of coffee is a great example of, this isn't going to close your $1 million contract, but it is going to make someone get back to you a little quicker or take the phone call when it would be easier for them to push it off. And so those little things make a big difference, and there's a whole lot of psychology that goes into it.
Actually open up that email instead of pushing it into some other phone.
Exactly. So you're not going to force someone to do business with you, but it can shorten that sales cycle, it can bring a few more leads through the funnel, and that all adds up over time.
Yeah, absolutely. The other question we had was from Sal. It was, what was one of the best gifts that you've delivered to a client?
So we do have this great custom integration with Amazon, where you can literally search for anything. So while we curate a lot of cool stuff, the best stuff tends to be when someone knows something very particular about a recipient. My favorite one that we always tell is we had a client who sent someone a kayak. And we were like, okay, like we actually called them up because it was one of our bigger clients, and like, what was with the kayak? Usually we're looking at $8, not $800 gifts, you know? And they said, well, look, it was our top referrer for the year. We wanted to do something special, big outdoorsman. And this actually worked really well for us because we didn't have a home address because it's a business contact. You can't send a guy who works on Fifth Avenue a kayak and expect him to ride the subway home with it, which made all the sense in the world. So they sent it via our integration with Amazon. Literally when he hits accept, all he has to do is, it's in his cart in Amazon, so he just gets it sent to his house, right?
Nice.
And we actually took that then and did, one of my favorite things was we sent a client who's a big tailgater, he's a Jets fan, and we sent him a Weber grill. And we were like, hey, for the upcoming season, and same situation, right? Like you would never send that to someone's work, that's just kind of mean.
Right.
But to be able to send it to their home without having to know their home address was like a really kind of cool thing. Those are some of the more fun things I've seen. On the flip side, we've had people literally send like a song. So they spent like $1 to send a song. One of the nicer, better use cases I saw was it was like the year that someone had graduated from college. So it was, hey, this was the top song the year that you had graduated. I just thought that was really clever for a very low sort of
within
output.
iTunes or like?
They did it right through, actually that one was through Amazon,
Okay.
Although we do have connections to iTunes as well. So I thought that was clever, and I started pitching out to people to do that, even with movies, right? This was the Oscar-winning movie the year you were born, or the year you graduated school. So you see people getting really clever and thinking of ideas we haven't thought of, and then we'll kind of repurpose it and curate it in there as well.
I thought you were actually going to tell me a song or Graham, have somebody come to your office and sing to you. I don't know if that's like a thanks
that
or
might
anything.
be,
That's
so
like,
I have this sort of extension idea of no thanks, and I think at some point, that might be a good no thanks. Someone you don't like, you send them
we
a
didn't choose to hire
singing
you.
telegram.
That's
right.
pretty good.
Yeah.
A question I got, I guess, is the compliance aspect of it. I mean, I could see that being an issue, but how do you go against that, the compliance? I mean, I think you kind of told me before this, but you go with the sales team and then you get to the HR team and work with them. But like, give me shed a little more light of that to make people comfortable with using it.
So actually probably our fastest growing vertical, if you will, is regulated industries. So pharmaceuticals, financial services in particular, a lot of rules around what you can and can't send, how much, not just for an individual item, but over time. And these things get very hard to track, and especially if you're relying on sort of someone doing an expense report and that being compiled. So one of the great things we have with Thnks is we can go to a compliance group and we can actually have them, they'll dig right through our whole product, say yes, yes, no, no. And then we set up limits for all the different places people can send. And not just for their own rules. The nice thing is we've compiled a list we've got all the Fortune 500 now and then some of their compliance rules. And you can look them up right in the system, or we can actually alert you if you're sending to someone at .aa.com for American Airlines. Okay, it can pop up and say, hey, this is beyond their rules, it's over $100, you don't want to send this, are you sure you want to proceed?
Yeah, I can't take that Benz with the cash in the bank.
Yeah, that's not going to work. Not anymore, maybe 20 years ago. But it's true, pharma was an area where, and I'm glad it's changed, right? There were doctors going on like Alaskan cruises with pharma reps. That's not good, but it's gone too far. Now they literally can't even give them a pen.
Right.
And so what we allow them to do is to say, we can connect some educational material, which is a compliance rule they have, and let them send something like a cup of coffee and say, hey, grab a cup on me while you read up on this new drug that we've got. I'm coming in next week. I'd love to, take 30 seconds of your time to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so this allows them to do that because it's all API based, connects to their compliance systems, flows through their systems, and just makes it possible in an area that really wasn't for a number of years now.
Right.
So that's probably the area I'm most excited about.
It's a beautiful thing. I like that.
Yeah, it is.
As we leave off, can you give the community some words to live by, personal mantra, ethos?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's always say thanks. Whether that's with a thanks, which I hope you do, or just generally in life, right? This was something that became a sort of side tagline for us, but you start to live it and you start to feel the difference a little bit. You really are, especially when times are tough or things are going on and you're feeling anxious, like to be grateful for what you have can make a huge difference in your own psychology and how you approach family and life and work. So that's mine. Always say thanks, no matter what. Be grateful for what you have.
Awesome. The gratitude.
Exactly.
Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Charlie.
Fist bump, right?
Fist bump days.
All right. And Nadal's going to hit the music. And that's it. Very cool.
That's great. Thank you.
Very cool. I think he turns off the volume at this point. Oh, there we go.
The happiness in the music. is